I'm losing myself as a black man in this world. I'm losing identity in this society. I'm losing myself as a black man in this world. I'm losing identity. Black man, can't you see? I'm losing myself as a black man in this world. I'm losing identity in this society. I'm losing myself as a black man in this world. I'm losing identity. Black man, can't you see? But they don't want you to know that you are the best of all amongst us all created. They don't want you to know that you are the best of all amongst us all created.
I think you must see it by now that I'm just missing the studio, because there is really where I could play all the tracks, and that one is so relevant. You just listened to Stonebwoy with Black People. It's not one of his popular songs, but it's one song that really struck out to me. Launched, I think it was released not too long ago, but it talks about Black people, our mentalities, and the things that we can improve on ourselves. Why is it that we don't believe in ourselves oftentimes? And I love that concept. So you should definitely look that up. That was Stonebwoy with Black People, and a very relevant topic for today. You are listening to Africa on Focus with me, your host, Miss Abba, still on a lockdown mode, actually, because I'm tuning in live from the city of Amsterdam, everywhere. And it's kind of a dark type of period. 2020 for a lot of people has already been written off. And in a bit, me and myself and Donnie are going to talk about that before we are going to welcome our guest, because we are going to continue to talk about young people and leadership. Here on High Radio, it's a bit after 8 p.m. Amsterdam time. And today we have a very interesting topic, and that is connecting global Africans and youth leadership. I just want to give a shout out to Uncle Kafui, who is saying, I'm watching live from Wassenaar. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure that you share it on your timeline and invite other people to talk about. I think that this time, especially my fellow Ghana-based people, and also, our generation that we look up to, are going to find today's topic really, really interesting. This is Africa on Focus. We come back every Sunday. Normally, we will be having a 2-hour show, but because of this lockdown that we are slightly going through, we have like a one power-packed interview, and every week I bring on someone very powerful to talk about, how we as global Africans can strengthen ourselves, our community, and so much more. Shout out to Eben. Thank you for tuning in from wherever in the world that you are. And he is one, I would say this, he's one of the masterminds that connects me with people, and he's like really like expanding my connections to have other people on board. But let's before we invite our special guest, let's talk about what's going on in our world. And let me invite my co-host Donnie to be here with me on the show. Hello, Donnie.
Hello, good evening.
How are you doing?
Good
evening.
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
You look well rested. I am very good.
Do I?
I am very good. Good to have you on the show again. Yes, you look well rested. Is it? Is that not true?
Nights. Well, I've had some rough nights because I had a deadline this last Friday midnight. So So, but yeah, we made it.
Yeah.
Handed it in, and so I think yesterday I got to rest a bit, and today I tried, but I couldn't really. Um, but I'm all right. I feel good. How are you?
Yeah. Great, great. You know what? I'm cool. I can't complain. I can't complain. I must say that what's keeping me on the media, like yesterday on Saturday, I don't go on social media at all. But today, I had to catch up with some promos for today's show and with the radio
Hmm.
guys and stuff like that.
Right.
And listen, this we're not just only dealing with a pandemic, but now we are really on a global scale dealing with a lot of us who are angry, because of
Mm.
the terrible happening with that, yeah, with that police officer.
Police brutality.
So
Yeah,
all
police
around the
brutality
world,
going on.
people are
In outrage.
exactly, exactly, and I would outrage everywhere from from the social media up until physically. I mean, I've seen short footages of the riots, people going nuts. Some
Mm.
videos were low key funny, and funny because I've seen a video of a lady taking with her a cheesecake. Just walking around like because they're breaking into malls and things like that. In the U.S., it was just like walking with a
Oh man.
cheesecake and it was like going on her way. And another thing I watched was somebody that was able to master one of the police horses, and he
Mm.
just took it out for a ride, with his fist up. That
Really?
yeah, yeah.
Oh
And
damn.
some of these interesting videos, some were low key funny, but I checked in with my uncle who's based in Atlanta, Georgia, and he said, well, the riots is really as bad as we see it on television.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty bad. It's but I haven't been so let's say indulged in it as much as I would have previously or back in the
Yeah,
days. Um, but I do know that because I've been following some of those who really do the work. Like let's say whenever there is injustice,
yeah,
they go to those events or they go to speak. They are the front line of when it comes to rights and all this for Black Americans. I'm speaking in
mm-hmm.
example of my son, Tamika Mallory. We have just the Nation of Islam. We have the Black Panthers, Malik Zulu Shabazz. Those kind of people who really do the
Yeah,
work um, diligently. And what they are saying is these riots, most of them, because the protesting that they are involved in are peaceful protests,
all right.
right? Yeah, and because there's this thing where you want to fight for your right.
Yeah,
However, let's say rioting and destroying other people's property, uh it's the thing
yeah,
that they're going to use against you, right? So
absolutely.
there's a proper way of doing things, and there is a very wrong way of doing things where
Yeah,
in the long run you are the, let's say, you are the one who's not going to benefit or from it. All right, so the riots is happening and people are, we understand it and fine. But still,
yeah,
just want to point out that the idea is peaceful protesting still, right? People
mm-hmm.
are not
Yeah,
rioting for rioting's sake. It has happened, and they actually believe that the instigators of those are actually
mm-hmm.
people who do not support the whole movement at all. You just
Yeah,
have a bunch of people just walking through, trying to cause commotion,
absolutely. Yeah,
right? Which is detrimental to the whole movement. Um,
yeah,
so I don't want the news coverage and the media coverage over social media to all become about this riot, because then
mm-hmm.
we lose the essence of this whole the
Mm-hmm.
demonstration. But
Right.
yeah. but certain things are low key funny. I find that funny.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
oh,
Some of these things are absolutely absolutely, absolutely. But
okay.
I think it's all comes down to the lives of Black people, around the world, really checking up with the real value that we have in the respective
Mm-hmm.
societies that we are in. I think that overall of everything that relates to Black people, Africans, and that which makes us tired. We can definitely say that on a global scale we're tired. That's really and one thing that I do love
Yeah.
seeing is that a lot of young people are on board to support, whether they are not entirely Black.
Mm-hmm.
You could see that the generation of now is really on board to make a particular change. Now I'm yet to talk to anyone that's based in what's it called in US, because I touched
Mm-hmm.
base earlier with my uncle, but I
Okay.
really hope to see this being the start of just real change, because we talked about this throughout the show, that when something happens to our Black people, it's more or less like, oh, it's them. You know what I mean? There is no a group or institution or something that feels liable or responsible to ensure that their lives are protected or they're guarded in some sense. And I think
Mm-hmm.
this will also contribute to unifying Africans or Black people uh, uh, as a whole, if you ask me. But it's been quite rough, for me. I think that even looking at the particular incident, it really like hurt me. I was like, I even shed a tear, because it's just someone's life, somebody's dad, somebody's uncle, and it's just wasted like that. Somebody's
You know.
dreams and aspirations and things. So that is
Yeah.
really the part.
It is wasted.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, it's not a surprise. It happens. Um, about the youth getting involved. It's always good to have the youth on the line as well.
Yeah.
And because they have the energy. However, well, not a however, and we also need the older ones, the elderly people, because they have the wisdom, they have the experience. Um,
Yeah.
in particular, this riot actually made me think of the LA riots in 1992.
Hmm.
Um, this was after the Rodney King beating.
Hmm.
There were also riots in LA, Compton, wherever. Big
Hmm.
riots, like that was a big national thing going on.
Right.
From that riot, I think they did have certain measures taken, but this goes to show that 20 years later, or even, I mean, actually 10 years later, Amityville happened. Also, another brutality, young
Hmm.
guy actually, brutally killed. And now 2020, it's still happening. So, there have to
Right.
be a change of, let's say, a, a plan, right?
Hmm.
Strategy. Like Dr. Umar Johnson was saying, the problem we
Hmm.
have as a nation, or the problem we have as a people, is the
Yeah.
fact that, and was also with the Black Lives Matter campaign that was happening 5 years ago, is the
Hmm.
fact that we think demonstrating or protesting is the
Hmm.
goal.
Hmm.
Protesting is not a goal; it's a medium. Same with boycotting. Boycotting things, or yeah, it's not. You don't boycott things to boycott. No, it's a medium. You're using that to let's say to financially compromise your
Hmm.
oppressor, or the aggressor.
Yeah.
Why? Because there's another goal that you actually want to achieve. So I just hoping that with this combined effort of young ones who have the energy and also the discipline to protest, that we still have the elderly ones
Hmm.
having a goal, or a goal in mind, that still we can pursue after this protesting. Otherwise, guess what? 10 years from now, same thing is going to happen. And what
Yeah.
are they going to do? Protest. What is going to come from that? Riots. And then that's it.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
like that
Like,
one.
what's the point?
I like
What's the point?
I like that one. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely. I like that. You know, we could go on and on about that. And I think that it's still on our to-do list, right? To have him on this show.
we
I
need him
mean,
on the show.
we do need him on the show. Absolutely. Well, speaking about, you know, what's going on in our world, I think for the last couple of weeks we've had several conversations with, you know, Africans like you and myself that are making impact within their respective environments.
Right.
Honored to have personalities like Denta Mwateng and was it last week that we even had Eddie Kadi, which was such a super interview. I can't wait to even share that interview. And one of the stories that you shared throughout our talk with Eddie Kadi was a very interesting one, and that was really a talk that you had with your dad. And the talk was really, you know, about the change, making change for Africa, making change for Ghana. And you came to this point where you were like, okay, he, you know, he made a particular comment, which we're going to talk about in detail. But it really made me think of the type of change that we can make as young people. You know, not everybody is really specifically knowing what type of change they can make, whether that be the image of Africa, whether that be, you know, a direct project, or whether that be the arts or the entertainment sector. So I'm really pleased to have somebody that we're going to talk to, Ghana based, you know, to give us a talk about what is going on in our world and how we can connect who we are with people on the continent. And I am really happy to have him here on board on this interview before he's going to be overly booked and we can't get an opportunity to talk to him anymore. So I'm just grasping the opportunity. And this very guest is one that I'm really truly excited about. Probably one of the few opportunities before, you know, he hits off. A startup re-engineering policy consultant. He's a researcher, lecturer, and missionary. And his 18 years of work experience has exposed him to more than 78 countries all over the world. I'm wondering if he could, you know, speak other languages alike. And some of the highlights of his work till date is one where he was part of the team that led J Life Africa in Ghana, a non-denominational movement to develop leaders across the African continent, which is also a topic that we'll talk about. He's trained almost 500,000 young people globally, and he's the immediate past head of programs at the Danquah Institute, and now the founding director, excuse me, of Kandifo Institute. And without further ado, I would really like to invite him to the conversation. Let's see if the connection is in tune as well.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Okay, good evening,
Good
Palgrave
evening.
Boakye-Danquah. Thank you for being on the show. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Abba and Donny, and a very good evening to all of you. Doing very
Very
well.
good evening. Very good evening. I even can see people that are watching from Ghana as of today, so I'm super excited. How has been your day?
Well, today's been extremely good. I clocked in into the office at about 0600 a.m. early in the
Right.
morning,
Oh wow.
doing a number of readings and doing a number of policy work. President is going to be speaking in the next 2 hours to
Yeah.
address the nation
Yeah.
on a number of measures that are being taken concerning the coronavirus, and obviously following global news on all of the racist actions that are happening around. I'm sure we'll have time to talk about it. So it's been an extremely good.
Absolutely. I'm very interested to know your take on that, about the craziness of our world. And
Yeah.
how is the semi lockdown in the motherland? Because I know from family that it's not as tight as here in Europe.
Well, yes, absolutely. The lockdown, it's going very well. You know that the mutation of the virus is extremely different from what we have in Europe, and so it's
Yeah.
changed a little bit as it's traveled around the world, and we're finding gradual recoveries for the number of people that have tested positives, and
Yeah.
it's quite encouraging just to see a number of measures that has been put in place by Noguchi Memorial for Research Center and then
Yeah.
KCCR in Kumasi, and a number of the health facilities that are working very well to make sure that everybody's keeping safe.
Mhm.
Yeah. Those absolutely, like, it's shocking the rest of the world. That's what is happening.
Yeah, very much, very much.
Good. Well, again, Mr. Boakye-Danquah, thank you for being here on the show. Before we get things on, because we would really like our listeners to know just as much as we know about you, and of course more. We would first and foremost, and that's what we ask every person that comes on the show. We know you, with the list of accomplishments and all of that. But if you could describe yourself, could you share with us who is Palgrave?
Well, thank you very much. I've had many people ask me the meaning of my name, so maybe I'll just start from there. Palgrave is typically a
Sure.
Jewish name. It means someone who is faithful, loyal, and committed as a friend. And so that's my name. So my name is Palgrave. It's my father's name. My father gave that to me. I was born on a Saturday, so I'm called Nanakwame because I come from a royal family. I was named after a man called Mr. Frimpong, so I'm called Frimpong as well. And my family name is Boakye-Danquah. I was baptized a Catholic, confirmed an Anglican as my first communication in terms of communion. I was ordained a missionary as a Baptist, and I'm a full-time Baptist minister with Trinity Baptist Church in Ghana. Briefly, that's Palgrave.
That's short and
That's a lot.
sweet.
Man,
That's short
that
and
name
sweet.
that name has a journey in itself. Like
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
oh dear Lord.
Is there a story behind it? Like did your mom ever shared, or your parents shared, oh, this is the reason why we gave it, or was any of that involved?
Well, I'm not too sure I had opportunity to ask my dad why he named me Palgrave, but I know that I'm the last born of 7 boys, and so on my birth certificate, my dad was expecting a female, so my dad named me Ive, Ivy, which is pronounced in other countries as Ivy, but he named me Ive. So on my birth certificate, you would typically read Ive Palgrave Frimpong Nanakwame Boakye-Danquah, and so I'm not too sure what his history is, but when I was baptized in the Catholic Church, I was given Peter as my christening name, and so
Okay.
yeah, I don't know.
As,
So
many facets. Well, we would like to know, because I just introduced you, and I think it's safe to say that you've been to more countries than myself and Donnie have been all together. You are definitely, you cover what it means to be a global African. Could we know what is your educational background, and what part of your story brought you to everywhere in the world almost?
Okay. So growing up, I went to University Primary School, which is a primary school in the premises of University of Ghana, because my dad was a medical doctor and lectured at medical school. So that's why I went to primary school. Then when I was done, I went to Adisado College. It's a mission-based school in Central Region, Cape Coast. I studied science, and when I was done, I came to University of Ghana. I did all the usual courses that everybody does at University of Ghana. I did Bachelor of Arts, humanity course. My combination was sociology, political science, linguistics, psychology, and social work. So at the time, we were doing 5 courses. I completed with a major in sociology and then a minor in psychology. When I was done, I fully obeyed the Lord's calling and went into full-time mission work. So I transitioned from Ghana to South Africa, where I went to study for my postgraduate in Christian Youth Ministry at South African Theological Seminary. And I did that for a year and a half, 18 months. And then I got work to do with Jesus Life Africa in Johannesburg, in Mpumalanga, Driefontein. So that was where I was commissioned as a Baptist missionary. And J-Life gave me opportunity to travel to all the 78 countries to basically do disciple-making youth ministry, to build up youth ministry leaders to be able to do disciple-making in the manner in which Jesus did. So I did some work in Middle East. I studied in Jerusalem, went to Jerusalem a number of times for what we call pilgrimage, but ours was a study tour. So I studied Jesus's life from his birth right up to his ascension, so crucifixion and then ascension. And remarkably, today is 50 days after Jesus' resurrection. So the Christian world is celebrating Pentecost today, which is just worth mentioning. And I did a number of work in North Africa. I did a number of work in South Central Africa. I did a number of work in Southern Africa and Eastern Africa. Then I worked with JLI for 10 years, and I came to Europe to do some work. I came to study at Spurgeon's College to do a Master's of Theology in Advanced Christian Studies at Spurgeon's College. And whilst I was at Spurgeon's, I took an additional course at Oxford University with OCCA, Oxford Center for Christian Apologetics. And so I give honor to my professor, Dr. Ravi Zacharias, who was one of my greatest Christian apologists as a teacher. And I came back to Ghana to work with the Danquah Institute as the head of programs. I was there for 1 year, and I moved on into other assignments to pioneer my own think tank, which is Kandifo Institute, which I'm sure we'll have time to talk about it. But in terms of education, at the moment, I'm doing an LLB. I'm reading law. I'm left with 3 semesters away to finish my LLB grad and go and do my qualifications. And I'm just a few weeks away, actually, from completing a master's in a Master of Arts in Conflict, Peace and Security with Kofi Annan International Center. And ahead of us, by January 2021, I will start my doctoral, which actually will be my second doctoral. I'll start my doctoral with NIPS. NIPS is a doctoral school based in Ghana, but it's connected to a Swedish school. So basically.
Wow. Speaking of education never ends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man,
absolutely.
I'm
Education never ends.
I love it. That's a true example of you never stop learning.
Absolutely. You need to keep the brain working every time.
Yeah, I agree. That direction that you do is not personally my cup of tea, but absolute have all the admiration for all of the knowledge that you take on. And at the same time, traveling around the world. What I think is really interesting is, there's like the big thread within your whole journey is obviously the missionary work. Yet in spite of it all, there is this other part which you always touch on no matter where you go, and that is leadership, and particularly youth leadership. How did this come about, and what role does it play within all of the many facets of the work that you do?
Thank you. You know that when you look at the global statistics, actually in Africa, we have 50% of Africa's population, young people being under the age of 25. In Ghana, we have 57% of young people being under the age of 25. And so typically young people have a role to play when we look at the development of our various countries. When we date back to the 18th century, 17th century, 19th century, 20th century, even up until now, 21st century, you will realize that most of the transformational revolutions that has happened ever in any of the countries that we have ever read about or ever visited were engaged by young people, because young people are the people that will take the risk. Young people are the people that have the energy. Young people are the people that are bold. Young people are the people that are serving the internet and reading some more. And so we realize that when it comes to the conversations of leadership, young people must be given an opportunity to come around the table to be able to share their minds. So in the next 37 years, Ghana is going to be 100. Ghana is going to be 100 in the next 37 years. It's important that when we are having policy conversations around the next 37 years, we have young people who are in their 30s, young people in their 40s, who in the next 37 years will be alive. It really, it's important that we put this together, because sometimes the role that the young people play is either misunderstood, that the young people want to take over the responsibilities of the older people. But we do not want the older people to leave. What we're trying to say is that there must be a reinforcement. There must be a reinforcement of the younger people infused into the older people. So we need the older people at the table, but we need a lot more younger people at the table. So we need 1/3 of the older people at the table, and we need 2/3 of the young people at the table of the conversations when it comes around development and leadership.
So does that mean get rid of some of the older people?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So if we take a population of 57% of the younger people being at the age of 25, and we take a population of about 18% of the older people being above 60 or 70, we can do a permutation of X number of younger people pairing up to A number of older people. So then there's a bit of a mentoring relationship. And so then the younger people can gradually transition into the older people's responsibilities at a younger age so they can be able to journey that milestone to be better understand some of the issues that they will deal with as they grow, and also learn from the older people when they have some real-time experiences that they need lessons from.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back so that people could really know what you're highlighting. And by the way, I see a lot of pro Kandifo Institute supporters really in the timeline.
I
For
see.
those for those of you who just tuned in, we are having a talk with Palgrave Boakye-Danquah, who took the time live from Ghana to have a chat with us young people residing in the city of Amsterdam, keen to support our motherland in every aspect, to know how youth leadership plays a dominant role in the development of Ghana and Africa as a whole. And while we are talking to him, feel free to drop comments, send us some questions, because we're going to have an opportunity to also look at some of the questions that you have. So let's take a look at Kandifo Institute. What is that about? Because I feel that all that it is that you're covering is highlighted within the institute. I know it as a think tank, but could you shed some light on what it's about, what it stands for, and which are some of the changes it's going to make?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So Kandifo Institute is a public policy advocacy, very interested in individual liberty, very interested in conservatism, is right-centered, very interested in free markets. But we are also very passionate about youth development. So we are passionate about young people thinking along various decisions that is going to impact their life and their journey. So Kandifo Institute, primarily I set it up thinking through it. Kandifo is a local word which means leader. So it's a tree word which means leader. Obi Odikain, someone who is a leader. And typically we would say a Dikanfo or a Chidifo. So the people that are leading, there are people that have gone ahead of us, which are the Echidifo or Omobe Dikaino. So that's the concept behind the Kandifo Institute. So basically we have a number of focus areas that we primarily look at. We focus very strongly on mentoring the young people. So we have established a leadership program where experienced professionals, and this is where we talk about the elderly people, will be linked up with a number of selected mentors who will mentor them in leadership in line with their tenets and traditions, that is particularly to be savvy and be able to communicate on critical issues on governance and economy. Our second area of focus is policy dialogue. So we do a number of policy dialogues where we organize regular policy dialogues on topical and critical national issues that are addressed by eminent intellectuals to give direction on national development discourse and actions. We also focus on targeted research. Research is extremely key when it comes to African conversations, because the data and the science, as we are aware in this season of COVID, is what is helping every single leader, every single president make the decisions going forward. So we do a number of targeted research where we do research that is of interest to government and research that is of interest to public life. And we always ensure that we involve the intellectual presentations of the discussions on research that are results related to governance and economy. We also do objective analysis of national issues. And so Kandifo Institute is non-partisan. We do not wear any political party color. We do not have any funding from any political party. We are extremely nationalistic. We look at our political orientation as red, yellow, and green in terms of the national flag. And so we do objective analysis. So our institute often undertakes objective analysis on national issues, which we use data and assessment methods, which is best benefit cost analysis, to consider the spectrum of alternatives and also reaffirm choices and positions. And often this will predicate government decisions on objective and evidence-based analysis and reporting. We also use technology for development. And so we know that we live in a technological world. So I like this. platform that we are using this evening for our conversation.
Yeah.
So our growth is actually related to technological advancement, and it's become an inexhaustible resource for efficient, good governance. And COVID has shown that the third world countries that are moving from primary production into secondary production need to up their game when it comes to technology. And so we use the ICT in terms of governance and how it can contribute to the entire development of the economy. And then also we look into grassroots development. So sometimes you can be at the very highest level of leadership and then you leave the very people at the base. So there are conversations about rural development. So we need to be able to bridge up the gap between the rural and the urban so that the rural can become more urban and then the urban can become more modernized. And so that kind of conversation. So we never leave the grassroots out. In terms of some of our initiatives that are underneath the Institute, we have 9 initiatives that we focus on very strongly. Quickly, I'll just go through that. We have an initiative that is called the Leadership Hive. So our institute usually undertakes monthly leadership series programs that is very packed and very impactful, is resourceful, and is challenging and is transformative. Since we began the institute, we have trained 1,500 young people from 10 different universities. And usually there's a monthly series where young people will meet to educate and challenge their thoughts on how to be transformational leaders, ready to effect change in the society. And our institute often would hold a national leadership conversation because it's important that we have a bit of a national leadership agenda. There are people who suddenly rise up to leadership without any skill, without any training. We say that leadership is an art and it's a science. It must be studied. And when you have an opportunity to lead, you need to be able to use the tools and the models to be able to ensure that you are leading effectively and you are leading right, as Americans will say. We also have an initiative called the Economic Hive, which is basically an initiative that is a quarterly economic conversations which detail the concerns of the people in the country. And so how the economy is managed and the impact of the economy on the development is extremely important. So these economic conversations will be held at the very basic level, right up to the tertiary level. And so when a Minister of Finance reads the budget of the year, of the following year, it is important that we break it down to the junior ones, the young people who are aged between 5 and 10, and then break it down to the college senior high people who are between age 15 and 18, and break it out to the tertiary people, so that it's not just an understanding of the working class, but everybody clearly understands it. We have an initiative called the Governance Hive. This is an initiative that I'm really very passionate about because many people misunderstand what governance is to mean politics. Politics is not governance. Governance is an extremely different thing. And we have many people that have risen up into leadership where they mix up the two. And if you mix up the conversations around governance and leadership together, then it means that we are not looking into the development of the country. And so our Governance Hive is really a governance conversations that streamlines between the ruled and the ruling. So this is where we bridge the gap between the citizens and then the government. And I've seen that this COVID has given every single government an unprecedented open effort to see the need of the people that they are ruling. And so many of the governments are doing a number of stakeholder conversations with some of the people that they are ruling. It didn't used to be that. And I do pray and hope that post-COVID, these conversations will happen, where we would have the ruling having conversations with the ruled. And then we are very passionate about mentoring and coaching. I'm a product of mentoring. I'm a product of coaching. When I lived in South Africa, and you asked if I speak any other language, but I'll give a Zulu proverb which says Ubuntu Ubuntu Ugabantu. Ubuntu Ubuntu Ugabantu is a Zulu proverb which means that you are not an island. You are who you are because of other people. So you do not exist as an island. So our mentoring and coaching hub is established to mentor and coach the young Kandifo, which is the young people that are coming. And this is where we bring experienced professionals to be linked up with selected young people to mentor and coach them in leadership, in line with the tenets and tradition that is particularly survey to some of the objectives that we believe in as an initiative. We have an initiative called Let's Go Lower. So Let's Go Lower is an initiative that looks between the conversation between young people from the ages of 13 right up to the ages of 30. It is out of this initiative, for which reason that we performed extremely well, that we started having conversation with the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme and then the Head of State Award scheme. I'm sure we're going to talk about it later on. So this initiative is where we nurture the young people to get them become interested in democracy, to get them become interested in governance, to get them become interested in economics, and to get them become interested in the entire conversation of governance. When I was 18 years old and I was going to vote, I'm not too sure why I voted for that particular political party. But since I've been involved in the conversations around politics and governance and democracy, I've realized that the various political parties have become extremely religious and dogmatic. So there are people that are born into a political party. And I think that as young people, we need to be more enlightened to be able to change that conversation. So the fact that my father is in political party A does not mean that I cannot be in political party B. And so we need to have those kind of conversations. But it's as a result of that we set up this initiative called Let's Go Lower. Let's Go Lower to be able to start the conversations with the young people whose future is being determined by the elderly people. We have an initiative called Let Her Lead. The Let Her Lead initiative is one of the primus inter pares initiatives because we hear young women and elderly women speak about women empowerment. We also hear them speak about feminism. One of the things that we want to say here very clearly is that I'm happy that Donnie and Abba are on the same platform because Abba has the skills that is needed for her to be on that platform. Abba is not on this platform because of her gender. And so we're having conversations that goes beyond feminism. We're having conversations that goes beyond women empowerment. And we are saying that if you're a woman, you're not marginalized. You are supposed to come to the table with your skills, present your certification. And we have seen in recent times that the various persons that were sworn in to be chief justices, to be Supreme Court judges, we've seen Professor Henrietta Mensah Bonsu rise up to the occasion to be called to the bar, to the Supreme Court judge. And so it's because of her credentials. It's not because of her gender. So we have this initiative to start making sure that we start changing the narrative of feminism and start changing the narrative of women empowerment just because of the feminism aspect. We also have an initiative called the MP Assembly Shift. The MP Assembly Shift is where every single 4 years we change, in this country, Ghana particularly, we change our parliamentarians every 4 years. In other countries like Liberia, it's a 6-year tenure. So Liberia would typically do a 12-year tenure, but Ghana does an 8-year tenure every now and then. So we want to be able to bridge the gap between the assembly and the MPs, the members of parliament. So the members of parliament are supposed to be legislators. They are not supposed to be parliamentarians to be involved in the down development of the local constituencies. But because the local constituents do not understand the role of their parliamentarians, they have mixed it up for the parliamentarians to be involved in the developmental agenda of the grassroots. That is why the December 17th referendum, which the president, Danquah, was seeking to ensure that we take the local politics down to the MMCs and DCs, was extremely credible. But we couldn't run the referendum for obvious reasons that many of you may be aware of. But we want to be able to bridge the gap between the local assembly and bridge the gap between the people that are in parliament. So if you come to my constituency and you promise A, B, C, D, you shouldn't make those promises for me to vote for you and then not do anything in the 3.5 years and come back again to ask for my vote. You should be able to be accessible. And so this initiative is there for us as a think tank to be able to bring resources and research materials that are credibly available to the constituents and send it to the MPs for them to know what is happening in their constituents. We have two last initiatives, which is the Battle Asumge. We've heard of recent conversations around vigilantism. We've heard of the fact that Ghana has become a beacon of peace and has become an example to the sub-region of West Africa, and Ghana has become a gateway to the sub-region of West Africa, South Africa likewise. But there are little pockets of vigilantism and xenophobic actions. Now, it's important that we remind the young people that peace is important. I have lived in Liberia. I've seen the impact of war. Liberia is almost 2/3 young people. Because of the war, every single elderly person died. And we have young people who are under 20 years old who are becoming younger parents. I don't think that anybody who has not experienced war, who says that peace is not important, that person should have a taste of war, because no one wants war. And so we have this Abatu Asumdie pledge where we encourage young people to pledge for peace every now and then. And then we set up our think tank center democratically to be thinking around elections every 4 years. What are the issues that are coming up from the various political parties? What are the issues that are coming up from the various presidential aspirants? Can we analyze these manifestos? Are these manifestos, do they have short-term goals, medium-term goals, long-term goals? What does that look like for us? as a country and as young people. So we have a number of these initiatives, and my board is chaired by Nana Dr. Danquah. He is the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I have a few. I serve as the executive director. My colleague Patrick Nyako is the head of policy and strategy. I have another board member, Dr. Mesa Abrampa, who is the Director General for NDPC. NDP is the National Development Planning Commission. And also a Frifa, the young man who did the GPS for Ghana postcode. He serves on my board. I have a few fellows. I have Ebenezer on my board, on my fellow Ebenezer Uwa, on my fellow board, and then a number of other persons that serve around board. And so this is what Kandifo does.
Right.
Man.
And
we need another hour full of interview.
But that was the announcement, Donnie. We're gonna have him back on the show. Upon my question as to how you were gonna do that, because the image, that we have as youngsters, especially in the diaspora, where often in general, African leadership as a whole, whether that be in politics or any other field, youthfulness is nowhere related in any sense to the current leaders that we have, not in age and also not in taking actions. And I love how you went into detail of the particular programs and how you intend to reach the ultimate goal of youth leadership. But what about convincing young people to get on board? Because one thing I know from often going back home, the trust of young people is often tainted in some way, especially after that phase of graduating, looking for a job, securing income. That plays such a significant role in the distrust that a lot of young people have. So I really would like to know as to how far you've gotten. How is the convincing part of convincing young people up to this point?
Well, thank you very much. I think that young people do not need to be convinced. It's okay for wherever you find yourself in terms of your sphere of work, you are involved in a political activity. And so politics is defined as the engagement of an activity that brings to the development of a country. And so when young people go to look for work to do, they can still be involved in the conversations of governance, on the conversations of democracy, in the conversations of the economy, and all of that like. And so in terms of conversation with young people, we encourage young people to not necessarily be activists, but we encourage young people to do the thinking, because you have a lot of the time, you have a lot of the resources available, and you know what is going on. So when young people should not just look for money, young people should look for knowledge, because knowledge is what will be with you for the rest of your life. Once you look for knowledge, the money will follow. I always tell young people, plant seed bearing fruit. Many people do not desire to want to plant seed bearing fruit. But when you plant seeds that are good seeds, they will bear fruit. But if you plant seeds that are bad seeds, it will not bear fruit. And so it's important that as young people begin their career, whether entrepreneurial work or going into an employment, it's important that you allow yourself to go through the various phases of your development. Because many young people start off life. I mean, I didn't get here in one day to become a policy analyst and a consultant and be involved in the conversations of governance. You shouldn't start your life in that way. You should go for a career. Go for a career. When you get your career, all the other thing comes on board, because then you have acquired enough knowledge, enough experience as you keep acquiring more, and people will trust you more, because then you have a track record of things that you've done in past time that can be brought into relevance in the present time.
Thank you. I saw you, Donnie. I think you had a question as well.
I don't even know where to start. Well, I'll say this, or what I do find important is, um, in your academic studies, one of you have a you majored in sociology
I did.
and minored in psychology, and then
Yeah.
afterwards you done, and now you still engaged with social economics and with people, especially with the young ones, right? And
Yeah.
just now, I have a couple of questions, notes that I was writing while you were talking. But just now, you did make a point that young people should, or I mean, people should be looking for knowledge rather than money instead, right? But
Accurate.
it's
Accurate.
hard. It's hard to tell someone who's trying to get by, just trying to find, well, not even their next meal, but not necessarily for them, but for the others, for their family or whatnot, to tell them to look for knowledge rather than money. And in some cases, even, and there's, what I will refer to is, well, Kanye West, when he dropped his first album, Graduation, towards his 2006 or 5, and the whole point of Graduation was the fact that, and he had like skits in it, and he was like, all right, so my dad went to school and he has all these degrees, right? And at the end of his career, at the end of his lifetime, he had nothing to pass on to him except from those degrees. And his problem was, what am I going to do with these degrees? One, it's not on my name, it's on yours. Secondly, all the knowledge that you did acquire within this academic studies, um, I can't use it. I can't go to the bank and cash it. Um, Yet still, so that was like the point. So the point is, all right, you can chase all the knowledge that you want and can accrue and whatnot in your career. However, if not translated into action or into wisdom, which is application of knowledge in my from my definition, then it becomes useless in a sense. For instance, I know all the parliamentarian officers or MPs or even the president or whatnot, they've gone to prestigious universities and all that. Yet still, the policies that or their behavior within their roles or tasks is like, that is where the distrust is coming from. Like, you people have gone to the unis, you've gone to the school and studied, and still this is what you guys come up with. So it's two things at the same time, and you are now still, you're bridging that gap. Can you please focus or elaborate on how these two ideas or ideologies that conflict or contrast each other, how that still kind of makes sense? Because I still believe in, you need the academic knowledge and academic background and research and all those things, and you have to be able to translate it into wisdom and into, but can you please elaborate on those two things and the synergy that has to be created there?
Okay, sure. Thank you, Donnie. So you're very right. A false balance of that is an abomination. And so it's extremely important that you get a holistic balance of the knowledge and you get to the holistic balance of the money. Because if you do not have the knowledge, you cannot acquire the wealth. And if you have the wealth and you do not have the knowledge, you will lose the wealth. And
You know, so-
so you need both. So I have three. I'm not sure simultaneously. So simultaneous is like doing two things at the same time. But I have trineously, so like doing three things at the same time. So you studying, you working, you studying. Okay, so that's really what you must do. So you realize that your parents do have a responsibility over you. For those of us in this century, our parents do have responsibility over us up until first degree. The rest is up to you. I'm not sure whether you guys experienced that, but I mean, when I was growing up, my parents were done with me after my first degree, so I needed to find my way up. Okay, and you need to be able to plan your life. So at a stage, you need to say, I'm going to either pause on my education and then go look for a work. And then when you go look for work and you're stabilized in your work environment, you need to say, I have some weekends which are free. I'm going to look for schooling where I can go for a weekend school. If you are done with your weekend schooling and you want to marry and procreate and add up onto children and the like, you would say, I'm going to pause on my studies some more, and then I'm going to go and marry and then have children. And so one needs to be able to put together their own life plan. I have always had a reviewable life plan. I have always had a plan A, I've had a plan B, and I've had a plan C. I've always had an entrance and I've always had an exit into any of my decisions that I make. So once I enter into I'm sorry?
Where did you get this idea of having an entrance and an exit and always having a plan? This is something your parents have to have
No, my parents didn't tell me that. I'll tell you. I mean, my upbringing was extremely different. I grew up during the PNDC era, and I don't want to remind anyone of anything, but my parents were in exile. Okay, so my mom and my dad were exiled into the United States of America in New Jersey. So we're in New Jersey for a while. And then we came back to Ghana to continue our studies. And then we lived at Bemakam. So I lived at Bemakam, number 48, Juba Villas, with an uncle who was a guardian. Okay, and I lived under military regime during that time. And at the time of my growth, I'm not sure I learned any of the things that I'm talking about. A number of the things that has become my learning path, I have learned those in my grown-up ages, where I took to my missionary work, and my missionary endeavor for 20 years taught me a number of things. I had a foster father called Steve Hudson, who lives in the USA, Minneapolis, who mentored me extremely. And so he invested heavily in me, gave me a number of books. I've read close to about 5 million books, and I have a house full of books. So I have learned these things based on the knowledge that I've exposed myself to, and also based on the things that I've allowed myself to learn and to be involved in. So, and I've read Shakespeare. So the thing I spoke about is Shakespeare. So Shakespeare has a quote which would say, all the world's a stage and all the men and women are merely players, So Shakespeare will clearly say, and then he says that they have their entrances and they have their exits. Okay, and Shakespeare will conclude that part by saying, each man plays 7 ages. So 7 ages means that people at 70 years don't have anything to contribute anymore. So you know what I'm saying? So that's really how my learning ages have been. And I've used that to advise myself, and I've used my life to advise younger people. And so I am at a stage where I'm stating that the things that you read in the books must be contextualized. So when I worked with my other organization, which was headquartered in South Africa, we had a Western approach. But because I worked primarily on the continent of Africa, I needed to contextualize the text to meet the African context, which was extremely important. It's not something I learned at University of Ghana. Sociology did not teach me that. Psychology did not teach me that. You understand? And post my University of Ghana degree status, all my studies had been in theology, in terms of seeking further studies of God. It's until recently that I came back to social science to read law and then to read a Master of Arts in Conflict, Peace, and Security. No mentor sat me down to tell me, Palgrave, go and read law. Palgrave, go and read Masters in Conflict, Peace, and Security. I just found myself in an environment where I felt I wasn't too prepared for it, but God gave me an opportunity. So because I wasn't prepared for it and God gave me an opportunity, I said, let me now build my preparedness with knowledge. So I went to read law. Let me build my preparedness with knowledge. So I applied to Kofi Annan. Let me build my preparedness to do a PhD, a doctoral in a social science course. So I'm applying to NIPS and I'm starting in January 2021. So it's a bit of a life plan that I've put together. And I'm not sure my dad was a medical doctor. I'm not sure that he ever put this together. My mom was a state insurer. I'm not sure she ever put this together. My guardian, whom I lived with at Bemakam, was a military man, and you know that the military people go to work and close at 1:30 p.m. I'm not sure that I learned that from him. So it's been my own studies that I've learned as I have grown up, based on the materials that I've exposed myself to. It's a Sunday. I told you I've been here since 6 a.m. I'm not sure how many people go to work on a Sunday. You understand? But it's a self-discipline that I put myself. And I'm not sure I came here at 6 a.m. because I had an interview at 6 p.m. You understand? I mean, I could have come to my office at 3 p.m. to prepare for the interview at 6 p.m. But I came at 6 a.m.
Right.
because I had a lot of things that I had to do. So it's important that you always set yourself ahead of the game. That's what I always tell my friends. Set yourself ahead of the game.
Do you personally mentor some of your the young ones within the initiative, the mentor initiative that you have with?
I do. Over the years, I've had opportunity of mentoring close to about 500,000 young people. And these 500,000 young
Personally.
people, personally,
Wow.
personally,
Okay.
yes, personally. And I've kept close relationships with them over the past 20 years and counting. And so there are a number of pictures that I can show you of young people that I started mentoring. There are testimonies that they themselves can share. Because sometimes you're not too sure the impact that you make in the lives of people, but one word or two, just giving up your time. Proud to come into this interview. There's a neighbor that is just behind my home who had a little bit of a challenge, and I needed to step down to hold that conversation. And it was extremely important to me, as much as this interview is important to me. So I'm sure that when Abba sent the message, she realized that it took a bit of time for me to respond. But I needed to immediately just mitigate whatever challenge that the young people are facing. So I live my life for the young people, and I've had young people that have come along my way, and God has helped me. I've never looked down on them, because the young people come with no resources. They don't have money to give you. They don't have intellect to give you. They don't have anything. They come in their raw state. So you need to invest more. But one of the things that mentoring does for the mentor is that the mentee rather build up the mentor, because the mentee poses you a question and you do not know, you, the mentor, go to read more. Then you can come back to your mentee. So that's what many mentors do not know. But intentionally as well, it's important that when you're in a mentoring relationship, you establish that relationship very well, because there's accidental mentoring and there's intentional mentoring. But all the 500,000 young people that I've had, it's been an intentional mentoring. It's been with extreme intentionality, where I've had monthly conversations with them, I've had yearly conversations with them, I've reviewed their goals, and we never run our calendar January to December. We've always run our calendar September to September. That's how we run our calendar every time. So yeah.
And then one final thing, that you don't look down upon the young ones, or but just it's a matter of semantics. But when you say let's go lower within its its definition could mean let's downgrade, or to and in your ideal or mission statement of or slogan of going lower, it can be misinterpreted for that you are at a high place, and you want to take steps lower, trying, it kind of would be sounding like you patronizing the young ones. Is that something you would agree or see?
Not at all. Not at all. So, like
Okay.
you rightly said, it's a matter of semantics. But
Yeah, it is.
when we look to the conversations of going low, I mean, obviously, if you are someone who is in your 50s and 40s, if you stand up to a younger person who is 2 years old or 3 years old or 14 years old, you're typically maybe taller than the person, so you need to bend down your head. Okay, so that takes you a bit lower. So it's really just a matter of semantics. It's not like you have reached a state of gnosis and you are higher than the young people, and so you want to be the one who is going to teach them. No, no one is a repository of knowledge. Your brain is not a repository of knowledge or a factory where you can ascertain everything. There are some things that young people teach elderly people, and there are some things that elderly people teach young people. So it's really just a matter of semantics. But the real concept of the Let's Go Lower initiative is really the fact that the young people have been neglected. And everyone can clearly understand that. And so we are saying that leave that stage of neglect and come back. So it's really coming back to the basics.
I love that. I'm so happy we will have another opportunity to talk more about the Institute and more about your plans at the moment. We got so many questions rolling in, and before we go into the questions of our viewers, I would really like to know from you, because next time when we talk again, we're just going to go more into the actual meaning of youth leadership, and also the contributions that the diaspora is making and can make, of course. But I would really like to know from you, you touching on young people to such an extent and looking at the current crisis that we are in, COVID-19, which has truly impacted people globally, of course, also young people as a whole. And the jobs available for young people seem to be even more uncertain. What are some of the, as a leader, as a change maker, as we would call it, what are some of the opportunities that you really feel young people should pay attention to and that you're also working on?
Okay, thank you very much. And so COVID-19 presents a lot of opportunities. It's got its very good side and it's got its very bad side. But I'd like to focus on the good side. COVID-19 gives us an opportunity to move from a state of where we are to where we want to be. It shouldn't be of us refilling the gaps where we have lost. We should rather use the opportunity of COVID-19 to fast grow ourselves. So Ghana is typically considered a third world country into development. And so we must be able to move from primary production onto secondary production, and then finally grow up into a tertiary production country. In terms of young people being adequately prepared within this season, I tell the young people that they should focus very strongly on their soft skills. And so what I'm working on now with the Youth Employment Agency is that I'm doing a number of advocacy and I'm doing a training for soft skills. So young people need to build their soft skills. So Donnie made an example of the fact that there's not much you can get from your education in terms of your certification, because if your parents hand over certification to you, it's not something that you can live on. But one of the things that you can live on is your soft skills, and you wouldn't get that from your education. So soft skills are your attitude, your character, your discipline, your integrity, things of that nature. Your ability to communicate, your ability to be prompt, your ability to think upon your feet, your ability to resolve problems. I tell the young people to focus on soft skills, because when you go into a conversation of employment and the employer wants to employ you, most employers put away the certificate, because now many people are losing trust in the certification, because just someone across the street can be able to gain that certificate. And so it really is not for the cream de la cream. Everybody has it. So what is your unique selling proposition, which you can bring onto the table? Your unique selling proposition, which makes you better than the other person, is your soft skill. What are the soft skills that you can communicate? Are you quick-tempered? Are you able to solve issues? What are those issues that you can look at? And so as we look at COVID-19 and we look at youth development and we look at youth leadership, it's important that the young people are adequately prepared with these opportunities that are available for them.
That's a good one. What do you also observe any within the digital marketing and tech and these type of futuristic industries, as I would call them?
I'm sorry, did you conclude your question?
Yes. Do you also see opportunities in other sectors? Because I'm just calling out to be an example. Some of the sectors that you also focus on is agriculture, for instance. Yet on a general level, we look at digital marketing, tech, and these particular industries to be the industry for the future. Do you observe any major developments that young people should attend to in other sectors or specific industries?
I agree. Tech is one of the things that young people need to start focusing on. So if we enter into the environment of AI, which many people are speaking about, so artificial intelligence is one of the things. Robotics is one of the things that is coming up. My friends and colleagues who live in the US have robots sending them their parcels when they buy things. So robots are doing deliveries, and very soon the human force labor is going to be replaced by AI. So we encourage young people to be able to pick up courses and be able to start coding, if you can, I used to script in Java and Oracle. So if you can script in Java, you can script in Oracle or C++. I'm sure there are other better versions that has come up. Maybe these things look too old, but I mean, whichever field that you can get in terms of building up your experience when it comes to the tech world is something that you should open up yourself to, because that's where the world is going into. The world is moving from the old way of doing things and embracing a new way of doing things. And the digital world is what it is. So economists and policies are going digital, and whatever is being done is we're taking into consideration how do we digitize this, because the economy is going digital. Very soon, many people will not like to be holding money, so currencies is going digital, and so those things are important for us to start looking into it.
Well, noted. Before we even gonna round it up, which I wish we had so much more time, but I know the president's address is also very important around a later time in Ghana. We have Lady Charity Akpagbe Ofosuhene, who says, Kandifo, I agree, comes at the right time to initiate intentional mentorship, which we basically need in Africa right now. Do you agree that mentorship hasn't really been defined to its full right within Ghana?
Well, thank you very much. I think that I'll take the perspective even beyond Ghana and make it an African one, because I have a bit of an understanding of the African continent and what it looks like. In Africa, we believe that elders must be heard and children must not be seen. And so that has trickled down very strongly in our conversations when it comes to mentorship. And so we don't have a rightfully placed mindset of mentorship. So my mentor, Steve, who has a PhD, I call him Steve. I don't call him Dr. Steve. And it doesn't mean I disrespect him. But in the African context, when you have someone who is mentoring you, you cannot question some of the things that your mentor tells you, because then you are considering your mentor as a GOD. Meanwhile, your mentor is not a GOD and a repository of knowledge of everything. So I do agree that in Africa, we do not have a good understanding of what mentorship is. And I do agree that it's important that we bring those conversations in at this stage, where the young people look out for intentional mentors, and the mentors also do not look at the young people as objects and tools of vigilantes or objects of tools of running errands for them, but they value the young people as a replacement of themselves. And so if you consider the young people as a replacement of yourselves, you would want to invest in them wisely. Investing in them wisely in terms of their career path, in terms of their educational path, family path, choices that really bring changes into their lives. You are there for them at a very right time. That is when you are doing an intentional mentoring. And then also the young people you should be accessible to the young people as a mentor. You shouldn't be inaccessible, because the young people should be able to call you anytime, and you as a mentor should be able to reach out to them. And then also it's important that the mentoring relationship is established clearly. There are people that do see other elderly people as mentors, but the elderly people do not see them as mentees. And so there's a misplacement. And it must be a horizontal relationship between you, the mentor, and the mentee. That horizontal relationship must be there. And then also there must always be a vertical relationship, because you must always remember that we are here on earth, and for us that are Christians, there is a man up here. So as you keep your horizontal relationship with your mentor, you also keep a vertical relationship with your mentor who is above.
Thank you. Another question that we have from Nathan Edu Akwama, who says, liberalism approach to Ghana and Africa's development. How can one join Kandifo Institute, please?
Well, so you can. It's a good question. You can join our institute. We're on Facebook, Kandifo Institute. Just type in Kandifo Institute and follow us on Facebook. You can easily come to our office. Our office is located at West Legon. You can easily send me an email. My email is my name @pbdanquah.com. palgrave@pbdanquah.com, or send an email to Kandifo Institute, which is info@kandifoinstitute.org. You can follow us on Facebook, like I rightly said, send us messages, follow us on WhatsApp. We are available. But you should know that when you come to join Kandifo Institute, it's not a holiday. It's work. It's work. It's not holiday. It's work, because then you need to realize that if I, as the executive director of Kandifo Institute, is starting work at 6 a.m., you better get here early. And if I'm closing at 10 p.m., you better also be prepared to close at that time, because that's the only way you can grow. You understand? The whole conversation of starting work at 8 a.m. and closing at 8 p.m., at 5 p.m., those hours is not what is going to get Ghana to develop. We need to be able to change that narrative. We're talking about the diaspora being involved in the national conversation. The diaspora, Abba and Donny, come to Ghana, they understand night work, but they come to Ghana and every single thing everybody does in the night is party. How can they be involved? Because then Abba wants to be able to sit down in the evening and work. But then the entire culture and DNA that is built around the Ghanaian society is party in the evening. If it's not party in the evening, it's sleep in the evening. If it's not sleep in the evening, you understand? And so if we want to embrace the diaspora, we need to be able to inculcate the DNA of the Western world into the African culture. That DNA is a DNA of discipline, a DNA of respect for time, a DNA of punctuality, a DNA of the fact that if you say you're going to do the road, you do the road. If you say that the light is going to be on, the light will be on. If you say that water is going to flow, it's going to flow. So it's not, if the diaspora gets here and they're extremely frustrated by staying in traffic for 3 hours, I'm not sure that Abba is going to come to Ghana anymore, or Donna is going to come to Ghana anymore. You understand? So that entire conversation is extremely important. And so liberalism is an approach to Ghana and Africa's development. You are welcome to join Kandifo Institute, a think tank that strongly focuses on public policy, research, individual liberty, libertarianism, center-right, conservatism. You're welcome to join us.
I love that. That's the working spirit. Also, another question. We'll just take a few more last questions from Akese Sakwa Ebenezer. If I may know from Palgrave, apart from all what he is saying about Kandifo Institute, about mentoring the young ones, where will these mentored young ones be after mentoring?
Okay, good question. So we need to be able to create space in the various institutions to accommodate the young people that are coming in. Every single year, we have thousands of young people graduating from the universities. These thousands of young people graduating from the universities cannot be employed by the government, because the government employment statistics is 1/3 of the young people that are graduating. What can these young people do? They should enter into entrepreneurial work. The young people should go to school, should study, and should come not looking for work, but they should come creating work. When they create work, then they become relevant. I am not too sure if beyond the work that I did as a missionary for 20 years, all of my life, there's never been a stage where I've had an opportunity of presenting a CV to ask for work. I've always been entrepreneurial in all of my journey. And I think that the more entrepreneurs that we're able to have in this country, the more developed we would be. And so to my friend Ebenezer Akese Sakwa, when the young people are mentored, they are mentored for their own self-development. Kandifo Institute can be able to create access and avenues into some sectors where we may have some bit of influence, but that is not the purpose of the mentoring. The mentoring is not a vehicle for you to be employed by a particular government agency or a particular private agency. The mentoring is for your own skill grow up and your own professional career.
Right. And last question from Steve Mans in Amsterdam, who also mentioned that he's doing, that he's representing Diaspora Development Network, who seeks to enhance the hidden potentials in our youth. He would like to link up, and his question is, your answer to the job creation, DDN Holland has contracted a company lawyer who has gotten us an investor opportunities network to build machine shops in all the 16 regions of Ghana to produce gadgets and small machines to do mass mechanical farming to feed the nation. With that said, Palgrave, when you hear of these initiatives, do you see any potential when it comes to working with yourself and with the young leaders that you are working on?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, these are good times and these are good opportunities. We have a pool of young people that we are mentoring, and so oftentimes people rely on us because they appreciate our credibility and how rigorous we go through with our mentoring. That when we give them young people to either be serving in their organizations, they are going to be extremely credible because we ourselves are credible. And so, yes, we do welcome these opportunities, and I'm sure Steve is going to stay in touch. I'm sure I'm going to get his details from you as well, and then we'll keep on the conversation. And so we're extremely open. We want to see the development of Ghana. We want to see the development of this continent. We want to see a young person becoming an AU chairperson who is bringing up this continent. You know, Nelson Mandela, may his soul rest in peace, gave us a good example of someone who fought for the independence and the apartheid to end in Liberia. The reason why he went to jail was the fact that he was fighting for equal rights. When he achieved that and was president, he immediately handed over his presidency after the first 4-year term to Thabo Mbeki as his successor. We should be able to start learning from such examples, that if we fight for something, it's not about us leading that path. We always need to get a successor. And I think that Africa will fail if Africa does not get successors to be able to equally sit around the table with our Western brothers and sisters.
On that note, I think we have so much left to be discussing on the next time when we will have you here on the show to go more a bit in depth on youth leadership and the responsibility that our leaders, our current leaders, and our upcoming leaders have, especially as it relates to our continent. One thing I would really like to know from you, Palgrave, you have a lot of young people who seek to make impact in whatever industry or whatever sector that they look to work in. What are your words of encouragement for any young person who is 24? Let's just put it that way. On top of my head, I don't know if national service is still running, but
national service is mandatory. Yes.
Right. So around the 24, they are still on that.
Yes.
Who's doing that, and who seeks to really make an impact and be an effective leader. What is your words of motivation to any youngster who is listening at the moment?
Thank you very much. I will tell every young person listening to me that you have 7 ages to effectively make impact. Consider each age as 10. So you may be in your first age, which means you're in your 10s. You may be in your second age, which means you're in your 20s. You may be in your third age, which means you're in your 30s. You may be in your fourth age, which means you're in your 50s. It takes 35 years to change a generation. And so by 35, which is considered midlife, because we know that, 35 is 70, which is considered midlife, you should begin to start specializing. So the 20s are years of experiencing. So galvanize all the experience that you can. Right. Volunteer a number of places. Try out anything and everything. When you begin to enter into your 30s, which is your third age, you need to start specializing. And so at the end of your 30s, the reason why they say that life begins at 40, which is in your 40s, is that you have specialized and now you have decided that this is what you're going to do. So in your 4th to your 7th, you have 30 years to cause an impact and to leave a legacy. So my encouragement to every young person listening to me is that stop the partying. When it's your birthday, stop the partying. When it's your birthday, go into solitude. Take time to think about your life, because in reality, you end your birthday in your celebration. So if someone is 40 years old today, the person is actually beginning the 41st year on the day of the person's 40th birthday. And so it's really not time for you to celebrate, because then it's really time for you to see that you're growing.
Right.
And when you begin to look at your past life and your past pictures, you should be able to ask yourself, am I happy with what I did, or am I going to be happy with what I'm going to do?
Yeah. For next interview, I really want to ask you some questions about that. Should life be partyless? I would really like to know for you, but we'll save that up for next time. I just want to give a few last shout out to those that engage with us in this conversation. A charity. I would really like to give a shout out to you, Patrick Nankon. Also, a shout out to you who says Kandifo Institute all the way, watching you from Birmingham, UK. And
yes, Patrick is a fellow, and he's our head of policy and strategy. He's locked up in London. Yes, he's locked up in London. He needs to be coming back.
He needs to stay healthy. He needs to stay on his toes.
Absolutely.
And also a shout out to Eben Ewa, who's boss man who made sure that this conversation could even happen.
Yes.
Shout out to you, Evan, for also tuning in every week with me. Mileba Duncan Amos, shout out to you for tuning into this conversation. And of course, our contact here from Amsterdam, Steve Mens Amsterdam, who is from the Diaspora Development Network and who likes to get in touch with Palgrave. Thanks so much for tuning in. Palgrave, we have two questions. One is random, one is relevant. The last one is actually, do you have shout out? And the first one is, we always ask this, what is currently on your playlist?
Oh, in terms of song?
In terms of song, yes.
Oh, okay. I think earlier today I was listening to a song by Victoria Orenzi. Victoria Orenzi is a Nigerian gospel artist, and she's actually one of my favorite gospel artists. She is extremely soulful, and she is very relevant for me when it comes to spirituality. She brings me back to the cross. And so in terms of my playlist, Victoria Renzi makes it every day.
Love that. And shout outs.
Thank you.
Do you have any last shout outs or?
Oh, shout out. Yes. So I've been working the whole day with my PA. I just would like to say thank you to her. She's called Nanaba Anaman. She's really one of the young people that we are growing and mentoring. I want to say shout out to her as well. And shout out to everyone. It's just too many people to mention. So I rather like to keep it simple. I'm grateful to you, Donnie, and grateful to, I give my shout out to 3 people. So my PA, Donnie, and Abba.
Great.
Yeah.
And it will be great to because in next week we have our normal Women About Business segment, but after that you'll be back on the show to talk to us some more. We have loads of questions and especially touching on youth leadership, what that specifically means for us, and how the diaspora could be a part. Now is really also where the focus is on the diaspora a lot, where the brain drainage somehow needs to be reversed. Absolutely. So we're really looking on your thoughts relating to that. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time. And we'll be catching you in 2 weeks. Have the greatest holiday.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
All right, Donnie. Here we are again, going on past time because the interview is so interesting. We should do something about that and like start early so we can really have in-depth interviews and more of that. Plus, we have some excitingly more guests that we have on the show, and like I always say, we should do one to also recap on some of the interesting people that we've engaged with, some of the topics, and also look at how could we really realize this thing of young people, Africans, also based in the Netherlands.
It's so important. Like the work that he's doing, I think it's under, let's say, underappreciated or under, it's like people do not understand really what it means. But the work that
Right.
he's doing now, or the initiatives they are involved in, it's so crucial. One of my question was to him if they were working towards, let's say, because in the states you have this colonel commission or a commission under the government of the states where they go out there and do the research.
Yeah.
However, they work under the government, but still independent. But they're so important for the development of policy, as well as so I
Yeah.
was going to see in what way like that Kandifo would also live up to that standard, where it is like when they say, hey, this is going wrong with the education system or whatnot, that the government also really listens to it, and actually but maybe that's not the power they're looking for. But in essence, it is like they definitely have the voice, or they potentially have that kind of voice,
Yeah.
because they just focus on the right things. It's so important. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And even
good
even looking at
conversation.
the even looking at the list of initiatives mentioned, you
Yeah,
could just see
this.
that the specific pinpoints just address, some of the problems that we hear about. So that is really good to know. We
Hmm.
have a list of questions to write down for next time, next time's interview.
I have too many. I have too
Absolutely.
many.
Well, for those of you tuned in, this is still lockdown sessions of Africa Unfocused. Due to some sort of lockdown, we are here, tuning in from our homes. Next week, Africa Unfocused will be back with our special segment. Myself, alongside Kimberly Ofori, touching on women about business. This specific topic will be about, kickstarting your business, the beginning phase, how to professionalize your idea. So we are going to touch on that. Johnny, do you have any last words or any playlist suggestions?
No, thank you for the platform. Thank you for and brother Eben for again
Yeah,
this thing
absolutely.
together.
I've been just
Somehow somehow it's like, because we were in the studio,
yeah,
it seemed like the focus were on physical interviews, but
yeah,
somehow like going to this
this space.
digital, yeah, it's allowed us to get people from over the world, where
Absolutely, it's crazy.
it's such a blessing. But
Yeah, it
thank God.
is. It is. It has really, ch- eliminated any border that we would think of, having before. So, really excited for our forthcoming interviews and looking what knowledge that we be getting out. So,
Hey.
but I'm not going to take any more of your time. Sunday, as it is already well spent. I'm going to find
Mhm.
myself tea. Chill out. Thanks so
All
much,
right, all
Zoe,
right,
for
all right.
tuning in with me again,
Thank
and
thank
on
you
to
for
the next
having me on here.
episode. And of course, have the greatest week.
Thank you, and
Okay.
all the listeners and audience. You all have a peaceful week.
Yep, that's for sure. Bye bye.
Bye bye.